we're talking about the gut biome and your diet, I am going to rush through some of the just bacteria. There's no need for you to remember names. There's no need for you to remember all that. It's more or less, I want to give you an overview. When it comes to things that are important, I'm going to treat this like a high school class and say, okay, this is what's going to be on your test. This is the important part. The information is all in there, and there's some very important things I'll get to along the way. But the vast majority of it, I'm doing it to prove a point. Okay? So gut health, biome. The gut biome is actually the ecosystem inside your digestive tract. Most people don't even realize the magnitude of it. There's actually more cells of bacteria, viruses, fungus, parasites in your gut than what makes up your whole body. The cells of your body are less than the gut biome inside you. So it's pretty important to know. The gut biome, in general, we're talking about the colon. When you go out there and see most medical reports, they talk about the small intestine and the colon making up the gut biome and the ecosystem. You really don't have that many bacteria in your small intestine and really should not have that many bacteria in your small intestine. If you do, you're going to have major problems. You're going to have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That is because the pH change from your stomach to your small intestine basically rids it of bacteria. They go in, the bacteria that can't handle acid are killed out in your stomach. The bacteria that can't handle the alkalinity die out in your small intestine. By the time you get to your colon, now we're more neutral and it tends to live well there. So that's why it's important. The main things that make up these trillions of bacteria, fungus, viruses, archaea, and parasites in your gut make up that biome. And I'm going to get into each one of these probably ad nauseum, more than you want to know. So what does the gut biome do? Mainly, we know it as digestion and nutrition. These little critters help you break down everything that goes in your body before it goes into your bloodstream. You have no way to break down any of these food particles once they leave the gut. And the vast majority of the work is actually done by the gut biome. We can add acids in, enzymes in, but actually the breaking down of the individual pieces are done by your gut biome. One of the most important things nowadays in our symbiotic relationship with the gut biome is actually our immune systems. If you want to know why there are more autoimmune diseases, if you want to know why people are sicker than they used to be, why we get sick from little things, it's because of our immune system is not being supported by the gut biome. Mental health. I'm going to get into each one of these more, but mental health, the signals that come from your gut biome to your brain is 80% of the signaling between your gut and your brain. 20% is from your brain to your gut. So this gut biome does a lot more for mental health and communication neurologically than anybody would ever think. Hormone balance, specifically estrogen. Estrogen is very, very much affected by gut biome. Endometriosis a lot of times starts as a gut biome problem because the estrogen is raised up when it should be lowered down, and your gut tends to do that. And when the gut's not right, you're going to have other issues there. Androgen issues too in women. So estrogen tends to go up. It breaks down into testosterone, that kind of stuff, and it gets messed up. And protection. The gut biome makes a perfect little slime layer on the inside of your gut, and so bad things don't get past it. It's actually for protection there. So now, when we talk about digestion, nutrition, it breaks down complex carbohydrates. So nowadays, this job, we kind of relegate that to the grinder a lot of times. A lot of individuals come in and I'll say, hey, you need to eat oats or you need to eat whole grains. I'm like, well, I'm getting whole grain pasta. Well, you just took away the job that actually these little bacteria do. And when they break down these complex carbs, they actually give you nutrients out of it that you're not getting when you're eating those processed carbs. So it breaks it down, and carbohydrates are probably the main thing that it really works on as far as breaking down things. Vitamin production. There's a situation now where we used to produce vitamin K2. And vitamin K2 is really elemental in taking care of calcium levels in your blood and pulling it to your bones and to your muscles where it can be used. When you don't have vitamin K2, you tend to have higher calcium scores in your arteries. You tend to have more atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries. And a lot of times individuals will talk about a situation where cholesterol is the issue, cholesterol is a problem, cholesterol is a problem. it's actually probably most of those individuals that have that, if they had vitamin K2 production, they actually wouldn't have their clotted arteries and things. Cholesterol in this situation acts as a band-aid when the inside of your arteries gets scratched up from too much sugar, things like that, inflammation. Cholesterol comes in, puts a really thin coat on the inside of your arteries, making it look like a scab. The problem is when calcium is not moving like it should, it sticks to that scab, and now you close off the arteries. So vitamin K2 used to be produced in our guts. Now we don't have the right flora in our guts to produce it like we did back in the 70s. So before 1970, we used to produce it in massive amounts. After 1970, they don't exactly know. They know the bacteria that produces it in cows, bovine species, and so they take it to try to give it to humans, and we don't produce it. So what they think is that there's actually a series of 2 or 3 bacteria. One bacteria produces a precursor, the next one changes over, then the next one makes vitamin K2. So we're trying to figure that out, but it shows you how complicated it is in the vitamin production in your gut. A lot of your B vitamins are produced by the bacteria. They take down different chemicals that are produced and they make vitamin B or B vitamins. And then absorption. A lot of times your vitamins take larger chunks of minerals, larger chunks of things, breaks it down, actually ionizes it where it can be passed through the digestive tract. So these are how bacteria work with digestion and nutrition, immune system. So this is probably the biggest thing that is messed up right now in our worlds as far as gut biome. And it is how our immune system trains our immune system is trained by the gut bacteria. Different things do it. The bacteria do it, the fungi do it, the viruses do it. All of them train it. So when you clean out your gut bacteria and all the biome in there, your body is looking for something to do. It produces all these white blood cells. It produces complement. It produces interleukins. And they're like having a bunch of soldiers sitting around camp. If they have something to do, they're going to go out and fight with the bad guy. If there's no bad guy there, after a while they get in trouble. They start fighting with each other. They start fighting with everybody. That's exactly what happens with your immune system. Those bacteria are trained to do what they're supposed to do, and they're going to fight somebody. It's either going to be you or it's going to be somebody else out there. So that's where it comes into. The reduction in inflammation. Most of the bacteria in your gut, healthy bacteria, actually have properties to reduce inflammation. So when we're talking about inflammation, everybody's trying to take all these things to take it down. If we get our gut bacteria balanced out, inflammation usually goes down. A great example of this is psoriatic arthritis. When you get the gut bacteria and diet figured out, I would say in 90+% of patients, it goes away. Psoriasis and the arthritis that goes with it. So these are the chemicals that are produced by the gut biome. And most people don't know anything about these, but each one of them plays a different role in balancing out your immune system. Some of them have a way of modulating pathogens. Other ones just take down inflammation. But each one of these plays a role in it. And without a proper gut bacteria, you do not produce these. These are not things that you go out and you get a shot of. These are not things that you take in a vitamin. Without the gut bacteria, you're just doing without. So when you can see now that people are getting messed up gut bacteria, you can see all the things that they're missing, and there's no way for you to have a good immune system. It's probably the #1 regulator of your immune system. The gut-brain connection here. The bacteria in your gut and your gut in general probably have more to do with producing serotonin, basically your happy neurotransmitter. And so individuals that have a problem with being happy or mood swings or depression and that, go back and examine what they're eating. Most of the time there's a problem there, or they've had an infection that hasn't been balanced back out. In the same note, histamine and serotonin are mainly produced in the gut. And the mast cells in your gut are triggered by the bacteria that are in your gut. So individuals that have a ton of histamine are going to find they have a dysbiosis in their gut. And then also the stress and anxiety are decreased with that too. The vagus nerve, I'll get to that I think here now. The vagus nerve, I think most people have heard about vagus nerve, but vagus nerve is a major nerve tract that basically goes from your gut, your heart, your lungs, to your brain. And it controls most of your autonomic nervous system, meaning the things that you do automatically. when your heart beats, all the digestion, all those things. But as I mentioned earlier, 80% of the signaling in your vagus nerve goes actually from your gut to your brain, and only 20% of that signaling goes out the other way. So it's important to know what happens in your gut controls the vast majority of your autonomic nervous system. And what happens in your gut is controlled mostly by this ecosystem in there.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
What is the vagus nerve telling your brain?
In this situation, it's telling it how it's doing. It's giving an overall status report of what's going on in your body, whether you're sick, whether you have an infection, whether you're hungry, whether you're satisfied, whether you're getting enough carbs. It's doing all those things for you. So it's basically, it's telling your brain whether you're in homeostasis. Homeostasis means balanced, or whether there's an imbalance. Unfortunately, when the gut bacteria are off, that signal gets really messed up. So, for instance, there's a lot of individuals, if they have a dysbiosis or their gut's off, they may think they're hungry all the time. And so next thing you know, they're 400 or 500 pounds, and it's really a gut problem. And you say, well, just stop eating. Well, they're getting a signal going to their brain saying you have to eat all the time. There's other times with them that says, hey, we are being attacked here. And it's usually a food sensitivity or something. So you don't have the slime layer in your gut. You have things that pass through. Now you have antibodies to it. The chemicals aren't being produced that calm down your nervous system. So your brain gets a signal, we're being attacked. We need to send more soldiers here to the gut to react more to it. There's a problem with that, and I'll get to that here in a little bit. It leads to autoimmune diseases. So the vagus nerve is really ran from the gut microbiome. So other benefits, again, hormone balance. I talked about the estrogen balance in there, and it's actually about estrogen reabsorption. So a lot of times the estrogen just gets higher and higher and higher and higher. You don't break it down like you should. So maybe you don't have the estrogen levels you want, but it's the byproducts that are getting stuck where they're at. So you can even have a situation where, yes, your estrogen's low, you're having all these estrogen signs, but your byproducts are huge and you're not getting rid of them to reuse them back up. Endometriosis is a classic one that's caused by a gut biome issue. PCOS, when we're having ovarian problems and multiple cysts and everything, that can originate with actually how gut bacteria breaks down carbohydrates. So a lot of those individuals that pull carbohydrates and sugar for a while, we can get that in remission for them just by changing that, or doing that and changing the gut bacteria. Weight management, again, this goes back to the vagus nerve and signaling. Those bacteria signal whether they need food or not. Fungi, in particular, yeast and that, when you begin to kill them off, they break out and they let mycotoxins out. And those mycotoxins almost every time will tell you you need sugar and carbohydrates. It's just a go-to thing. So people think that a lot of times, oh, I'm going to kill all this fungus in me, I'm going to do it quick. It's something that you really want to do over a matter of months, because if you try to go kill out mycotoxin, it's actually bad for your brain. It'd be like being in a house full of black mold. Instead, it's inside you. So as you kill it out too fast, it releases it. You need to have the chance to let your liver clean it out. If you don't, you're going to have a problem with sugar cravings and addictions, actually. The chronic diseases, basically, if you don't have the right gut flora, your likelihood, again, of having the type 2 diabetes goes through the roof. Certain cancers go through the roof, and then heart disease. There are a number of bacteria out there, and then the archaea that I'm going to mention in a little bit, they have a lot to deal with heart disease. When you don't have them, your likelihood of having inflammation in the vascular system goes up. So this is kind of an important part that I want you to know. It was probably in 1840s, 1940s, when they started figuring out that bacteria even existed. And then it was in the 1840s when they figured out it existed, 1940s when they figured out these things might be important in the gut. And by 1970s, they're like, okay, yeah, we probably need to do some probiotics. This is something here. Just recently, they figured out that there are viruses that benefit our gut. And so most people are thinking viruses are a bad thing. They actually do very much to help balance the gut and also heal the barriers. The fungi. It's interesting. If anybody works in the hospital or knows, there's a thing called C. diff. And it's one of the worst things you get if you've been on antibiotic treatment. The antibiotics kill out everything, and C. diff comes on. There's actually a fungi that helps keep that from happening. If we give that to people when we put them on high-dose antibiotics, their likelihood of getting C. diff would drop drastically. Archaea are a type, they're kind of like a, imagine just a little jelly guy kind of floating around in there. That's what they look like. Some people consider them a parasite, but they actually have benefit to us, especially with heart stuff. And then parasites. Everyone would think, I don't want a parasite in me. But actually, parasites actually can help balance out your immune system sometimes better than anything else can. So bacteria, just run down through the list. Bacteria help with the digestion, the nutrient absorption, the immune system, vitamin production, mental health, inflammation control, barrier function. So they help make the inside of your lining of your digestive tract. They actually break down a lot of medications and drugs. People that have a good digestive system break down medications different than people that have a bad one. So it's kind of interesting. Hormone regulation and protect against other things. A good healthy flora of bacteria in there keep down everything else. The fungi, digestion, nutrient absorption. So all of you know that out in the forest, well, I'm from Missouri, so we had lots of deciduous trees and forests there. Leaves fall on the ground, and over years and decades, you'll have about this much leaves, and then there's dirt below it. And it's only the fungi that really breaks them down and does that. In our gut, it's probably one of the leading things that breaks down carbohydrates, fibers, and things so that everybody else can eat it. So you can see the fungi is the one that's feeding everything else in there. So it's very important that we have it. Immune system support, inflammation control. This is significant for a couple different fungi that they actually take down inflammation. So we have patients come in all the time. They're like, "Well, I'm taking oil. I can't think of it or oregano oil, and they take oregano oil every day, all the time, and you are pretty well eliminating this whole process in your body. So fermentation in your gut, you've killed it out. And if you're not having problems with fungus and yeast infections, it's probably something that you're doing that's very detrimental to yourself. Viruses. So the main things that viruses do is viruses tend to kill certain bacteria. They tend to kill bad bacteria more than they kill good bacteria. And it happens to do with the way bad bacteria have a different kind of cellular wall to them that viruses tend to attack, and your good healthy bacteria don't have that. There are studies out there saying if you don't have certain viruses in your gut, that you can't actually build up a thick wall to your intestinal lining. And so it's actually extremely important to that. And the Archaea, these are methane production, and a lot of times they will measure methane production to see if you have a bacteria called H. pylori. It's one of the tests you do. They'll give you sugar, you take it in, you do a breath test to see if you have it. Unfortunately, when they try to kill out the methane producers, they happen to kill out this guy too. And it actually has to do with pH balance. So when we talked about your small intestine having a 8 pH, which is very alkaline, killing out the bacteria, without this guy, you tend to start getting SIBO. You start to get bacteria growing up in places they shouldn't be. This also makes short-chain fatty acids, which help with inflammation. And then the big one is the trimethylamine, which it reduces it. This is a compound that is one of the things when I talked about arteries early on and sugar going through arteries and scraping the inside of the arteries. This is one of the characters that causes that scraping and scarring inside the arteries that causes the calcium to build up in there. So with the Archaea, that helps out with that. We get these usually from dirt, by the way. And then parasites. This is an interesting one. Everybody, for the most part, thinks parasites are horrible. I used to have a family that worked for me. I used to run an import business, and they were from the Philippines. And they actually would get pills in all the times from the Philippines of different parasites that they would take. And that was just their doctor there would send them over, and they would take them. And it was kind of actually disgusting because sometimes they wouldn't flush stool, and there'd be parasites in the stool, and you'd have to come out and say, "Are you taking worms again?" You know, and they were, but they were not sick often. Was the interesting thing. So they took worms a lot of times if they thought they were coming down with like some kind of autoimmune type symptoms, things like that, arthritis. They would take parasites. I'm not recommending that, by the way. I'm just saying there's other people out in the world. So I've never prescribed a parasite to anybody, just for the record. But anyway, their biggest catch that they do is immune modulation. So parasites, when they bite into you, they release chemicals so that you don't know you got bit. And those chemicals go out and they basically tell everything around it to calm down. Just relax. There's no problem here. Nothing to look at here. Nothing to look at here. And that takes your immune system and it brings it down some so that you don't have autoimmune diseases. I think either the chemicals out of parasites or certain sterile parasites will be used in the future to take away autoimmune diseases. They also tend to increase circulation. They put out chemicals that they release when they bite into you. They release chemicals that make circulation come more there because they want to suck your blood. So that's why it happens. Even ticks, when they bite you, you have an immune modulation. You have more circulation to the area. They numb up the area, things like that. In some cases, with the roundworms, hookworms, and that they can provide wound healing inside the gut, especially individuals with Crohn's disease, that kind of stuff, because you're attacking it. It takes down that and also puts out some chemicals to help heal it. And also, they tend to eat bad bacteria too. So this is kind of a brand new field, and it's growing. So this is probably the most important thing here to know, that really the two things about your gut, what it's doing for you, this microbiome, is it's doing immune modulation and it's managing dysbiosis. It tends to run its own little circus in there, and it tends to kick out the bad guys, and it tends to keep your immune system calm. When you mess it up, you're going to have problems with immune modulation, so you're going to start seeing autoimmune diseases, you're going to start seeing inflammation, you're going to see arthritis, you're going to see flu-like symptoms. That's what comes on. I'd say hormone imbalance too. And then you have your gut itself. When it gets messed up, you know it. You have gas, you have bloating, you have all the things that go with that. So don't let the boogeyman scare you. I think one of the things that really just makes me shake my head every time I walk into Walmart and people over there grabbing 3 or 4 alcohol wipes and wiping off everything that they do. And there's a time and place. I can see when COVID first hit and we didn't know exactly what was going on, we're like, okay, I'm trying to mitigate the problem here. But in general, the bacteria that you're going to get in your system, you're going to get most of it in from contact. And when you touch things and you touch your skin, whoop, I just messed it up. Well, I think at least we know the boogeyman there. When you touch things and you touch your skin, you have a bacterial layer over your whole skin. And it tends to kill out the bad guys pretty well. Unless you're scrubbing down with soap, you're using alcohol, you're using the Clorox wipes and all those things. And so if you're touching your hands and you're touching bacteria, you're getting the good bacteria that you need. You get it on your hands, eventually it makes its way into your face. What you don't want to do is take and put your hands directly in your mouth, directly in your nose after you touch things. So it's I've given a lecture just on that alone, of how to mitigate catching colds and stuff. If you do not have your hands touch your nose, your eyes, let's say your ears, nose, eyes, or mouth, your likelihood of catching a cold is extremely low. Even if somebody's hacking and coughing next to you, your likelihood of catching that is very low. There's a few respiratory viruses that propagate that way, but the vast majority of them take contact and take contact. And so you can actually gather good bacteria by touching other things and letting it grow on your skin. And then it actually gets to the point that it'll grow and it multiplies. Bad bacteria, your skin has a barrier that tends to kill the E. coli's, the things like that. Good job. You didn't use your hand to touch your nose. No telling where that book's been. So an interesting study I read probably 3 months ago that really sparked something. It says, if you have people that you admire and you want to be more like them, touch them. And I thought it was going to go into a whole energetic thing and that you're taking energy from them. But no, a lot of times those individuals actually grow a whole nother type of bacteria than you grow. So if there are people that can reach goals, if there are people that are thin, if there are people that are doing things that you admire, you touch them, you actually start assimilating their bacteria into you. And so then maybe your serotonin levels go up. Maybe your ability to do things goes up. So it's kind of a crazy thing, but had nothing to do with energy. It's like you're basically going to pull bacteria from them. So people you admire, people you want to be more like, give them a hug. That's the way it is. Well, yeah. So this was something that was really apparent during COVID. Individuals all thought that they had to do something to keep from getting a virus and getting sick. And so people were taking all kinds of supplements to boost their immune system. They were doing things to make sure that their immune system was as strong as it could be. Probably 90%, it may even be more than that actually, but 90% of people in America, their immune system is actually too high. So when you see the person that's getting cold and hacking and coughing on everything all the time, you think, oh, well, they must be sick. They're getting colder. No, their immune system a lot of times is overreacting. And COVID in particular, individuals overreacted to a lot. People with autoimmune diseases, they tend to overreact. So some individuals got COVID, they got it down their lungs, and they had a little cough. Okay, I'm okay, and they're over it. Because their immune system did the appropriate amount of response to it. It came in, it saw it, it attacked it, cleaned it up, and did it. Other individuals, they got a little virus into them. Their body says, it's the end of the world. Let's come in. We're going to produce a bunch of mucus. We're going to produce a lot of interleukin. We're going to produce a lot of cytokines. And they overreacted and they ended up in the hospital with pneumonia. They had to be put on prednisone, everything else. So most people are not immunosuppressed. Most people actually have an overactive immune system. And knowing that right off the bat probably changes the way that most people would react to colds and things. Common autoimmune diseases. So Hashimoto's thyroiditis, it's an autoimmune disease that has a TPO antibody, means your body's reacting to itself and usually to gluten, and it cross-reacts. Rheumatoid arthritis is another one that you begin to react to your own joints and the synovial fluid and the joints around it. Lupus, type 1 diabetes, all these are autoimmune diseases. Every single one of these is your body overreacting. And when you look at the gut biome, in many individuals, especially caught early, we change up the way they eat, we change up their gut biome, get things balanced out, and we get it into remission. The longer you go, the harder it gets because the more damage that's been done, the harder it is to change your diet too. The older you get, the more stubborn you get. And I'm saying that personally too, that I'm the same way. There are individuals that are immunosuppressed, but in general, you see this line is a lot less. The number one thing to look at is, I set up here, non-medication induced. Nowadays, there are a lot of people taking immunosuppressive medications because they have to bring their immune system back down because it's gotten so hyped up, and usually most of that has to do with digestive issues. There's some other exceptions, HIV, cancers, especially blood cancers, malnutrition, and overnutrition. When people eat too much, their system goes down because it says, hey, I don't know what to do with this. Malnutrition, it just doesn't have enough to build it up. Stress, when cortisol levels go up, the immune system goes down. So you can have a situation there too. Lack of sleep, and then chronic infections. And many of these chronic infections go back to diabetes. When you have blood sugar issues and that's what most of them in this situation go to when you're immunosuppressed. So dysbiosis, I've mentioned it several times, and I probably should have gave the definition earlier. It's an imbalance of the organisms in your gut, and usually you get a bad one in there, but that's not always the problem. Sometimes it's just that some good bacteria go up and some go down, and you get an imbalance in there. Now, this is common ones that cause dysbiosis. So these are usually your bad guys. I'm not expecting you to remember these. I just want to tell you that you know there are some bad guys. They're not actually as important as the good guys. The C. diff, the Clostridium difficile, is the one that happens in the hospital after you've been on antibiotics too far. E. coli is one that you usually hear. They'll take salads and things and have to throw them away, or bad beef they throw away. It's usually a food product. In areas in the Midwest, E. coli is being spread by geese, Canadian geese. And so it tends to live in warmer waters and stuff. And so people will go swimming or go fishing, and maybe they're going to bite the sinker on their weight to bite the line, and they get E. coli in and they get sick from it. Usually on most E. coli strains, your body kills it out just fine. But there are some resistant ones out there. E. coli 0157 is one that your regular medications can't kill out, so it's a little tougher. We all know about salmonella with food poisoning, Shigella. This is one that a lot of times you'll hear from eggs, and then Campylobacter. And then the last one is Helicobacter pylori. This is H. pylori. This is one that everybody talks about ulcers in your stomach. That's usually due to not having enough acid in your stomach. I had an interesting case one time when I worked in the hospital. Some people went camping out here in Yellowstone. They actually flew into Jackson and they flew back into Kansas City, and they were all sick as a dog. I mean, the whole family, they actually had to go pick them up at the airport in the ambulance. And we bring them in, I think it was a mom, dad, son, and daughter. Anyway, all of them had a different bacteria growing in them whenever we did their stool sample. So one of them had salmonella, one of them had shigella, one of them had campylobacter, and the other one had giardia, which they got out of drinking a mountain stream. So it was just an odd case because we thought we can't be right. But after we interviewed them, they didn't have enough food for all of them to eat the same thing. They were running out of food, so each one ate something different, and they all ended up with something different. Kind of an interesting one. We run different tests here, especially stool sample tests. And what I want to show you is that it doesn't have to be a guessing game. A lot of times if you're having digestive issues, you go to the doctor and like, well, okay, you may have a bacteria or something here, and they may give you an antibiotic, and maybe it knocks it back for a short time period, but then the symptoms just kind of linger on. If you're not given the right antibiotic for the right bacteria when you're sick, basically you can just get this smoldering infection that may last you 20, 30 years. So if you have that, it's okay to go get the antibiotic, but if the symptoms come back, then it's time to step it up to the next level. And this would show you that there was none found, and this here says this is at a potential pathogenic level, and these are non-pathogenic. So like I said, it matters how much you have in you. Sometimes you can get a bad bacteria. Probably most of us are carrying a few bad bacteria in us, but it's when they get to a certain level that they're actually an issue. The Klebsiella pneumonia, I had a patient who came to me and had been having headaches for about 15 years, and he would describe the headache right here on top of his head, and he'd always do, I just got a headache here. And we were struggling. Finally, I said, you know, let's see if this is a gut-brain problem. Let's do this test. Anyway, his Klebsiella was off the charts. And I think the next slide, we got that back saying it was off charts. And then it tells us what things kill it. So these are natural agents we can use. On his one, we tried the oil of oregano. It helped, but didn't get rid of it. Finally, I sent him to his doctor, and we got him an antibiotic. He took it for 10 days. Anyway, never had a headache again. It all the way went away. And that was all because of one bad bacteria in his gut. So that's why usually, you know, hey, you go to the doctor. It's fine if they knock it out. But if symptoms persist, we go this way here. Viruses. I think all of you probably heard of norovirus. It's the one that you get when you go on cruise ships and you're touching stuff and then touching your face, or somebody has contaminated the food there. All these viruses here are typically ones that you see as bad. When we have a situation and we can't figure out what virus it is, we tend to order advanced tests to do it too, and we can see what's there. Usually on the viruses, we may use ivermectin is one of the things that we can use on viruses. Having said that, it's important. I may have this later in the slide, but ivermectin has a benefit. There's many times it's used, and a lot of people are either pro or anti ivermectin, and it's a tool. When it's used correctly, it's absolutely spectacular. When it's used wrong, it's absolutely horrible. And you know, the people that say, "Oh, there's no place for it" and everything, especially people in the government, tell me why we give out 500 to 300 million doses a year to foreign countries. We give it out to Africa, we give it out to South America, we give it out to all the third world nations. What's ivermectin? Ivermectin it's one that they were talking about for COVID, that it helped kill out COVID. It's actually an anti-parasitic, but it has antiviral properties. What it does is it actually interferes with the cellular layer on the outside of organisms, and they break apart or they can't multiply, is what it does. It's mostly used in animals and third world countries. That's why it's kind of funny. Here in the United States, we mainly use it for animals, and that's why it got such bad press. The rest of the world, we literally give out 500 million doses a year. So I always thought it was funny when they were talking about how bad it was for people. I mean, how bad are we as a country to give out that many doses?
I survived it.
Yeah, well, so in the right place, it's very good antiviral. It's one of the best antiparasitics. But point being about that, there are individuals out there who are taking it almost every day. And those individuals now, after we're getting out a year or two out on taking it every day, they have killed out the good viruses in their gut. And so now they're having a lot of gut problems. And those good viruses in their gut also must have something to do neurologically. People that are on ivermectin, let's say 3 times a week or more, most of them are starting to get really quick dementia. So I think if you're coming down with a virus, it's a great tool. If you know you have a parasite, great tool. But I think taking it prophylactically all the time, not a good idea.
Can children take it?
Yeah, children take, that's who we mainly give it to in the rest of the world. So dosing is important. So what happened during COVID, individuals found out that it helped because places like Africa, they were getting the doses of ivermectin and they weren't catching COVID. They expected COVID to wipe out Africa, and it didn't happen. And so they came back and said, oh, it was ivermectin. Well, then people went out and they couldn't find it because doctors wouldn't prescribe it. They went out and bought paste, horse paste. Well, we're talking about a teardrop of horse paste is more than enough for a human. And so people were going out and just squeezing it in like by toothpaste, and then they were having heart palpitations and having all kinds of problems with it. So there wasn't necessarily a problem with taking it, it was a problem with dosing people were taking. So fungus, the albicans is the typical one, like when we talk about yeast infections and things like that in thrush, that's the typical one. People try to kill it out all the way. In a normal, healthy individual, you have it growing in your gut and it's actually beneficial. It's when it becomes overpopulated that it becomes a problem. And usually it becomes overpopulated when we've killed out the bacteria. So it has a symbiotic relationship with bacteria that kind of tug and pull. When you kill out the bacteria, it can overgrow. And a lot of times it can be very hard, to get bacteria to grow again in those areas. Crucii is a little different. It's a little more aggressive one that can really take over quickly. When we think that somebody's having a fungal issue, a lot of times we'll run a stool sample test, we'll see what's there, and a lot of these will pop up and we know to clean it up. This is a sample test, but there was only one there, and that is Candida albicans, and usually that's a pretty easy one to knock back. By the way, this is something that when I give a lecture sometimes on reproduction stuff, the one thing that most people don't realize, if women are catching yeast infections over and over and over again, and you're not doing anything wrong, have your partner checked. That's probably a situation where I would say probably 70% of the time when it's happening over and over again, it's actually the guy needs to go on something, not the lady. So that's important to know. We run the same thing again with these sensitivities on these. We find out what's going to work. We show the medications. Nystatin always works well with that. A little hard on the liver, but then there's natural ways to take care of it too. And I will say they work pretty well for most people. Parasites, I talked about Giardia. That's the one, they call it beaver fever, but usually it's in bear scat. And so anywhere where you have bears or beavers, don't drink the water without treating it first. Cryptosporidium is not one that's usually a problem in most people. In fact, it's found usually in most municipality drinking water. You can't kill it out. Chlorine doesn't kill it out, so it's usually found in most places. The only time it is really a problem for anybody is people that are immunosuppressed. So people that are on chemotherapy, people that have had bone marrow transplants, kidney transplants, that kind of stuff, or HIV patients, you got to watch out for it. And then you have to get a viral filter to run through so they don't catch those things. Entamoeba is one of those ones. It's a little jelly ball. Don't think it's much of a problem out here. It likes warm water. And so there was a situation back home in Missouri that the Amish, a bunch of them died from it. And usually you get it from jumping in warm bodies of water. So like a warm pond that's kind of dirty and everything. You jump in, it gets pushed up through your sinus cavity and eats your brain out, basically is what happened. But it can be pretty bad in your digestive tract too. And then parasites, hookworms, pinworms, tapeworms, all those, they can cause some anemia, digestive issues there. And we test for all those if we think they're a problem, is what we do. A lot of times, if individuals come in and I think there's a problem here, I will do what I call a trial of care. And so I usually say, okay, from seeing all your symptoms, seeing what you're describing, this is what I think you have. Let's try this herb, let's try this here. And then we do maybe a month trial of care or something. That's cheap and easy. Then if it doesn't work out, or you've already been to see every doctor and you can't figure out, then I order these tests. Most of these tests are anywhere from $299 up to $800, depending on what we run there, but they can be beneficial. And so these bacteria here, this shows you what we call commensal. Commensal bacteria means good bacteria. And a lot of times you think, well, why run a test and see what's going on commensal bacteria? But when we look at them, if we can see that they're all in normal range, great. But sometimes you can come in here and you can look at them and you can say, well, yeah, we don't have this bacteria. Clostridium helps heal the gut lining. Well, you don't have any of it. Let's get you a probiotic that has that particular one if you're having gut problems. I don't happen to see Akkermansia up here. Akkermansia is one of those ones, if you're a person that's totally having cravings all the time, can't control your weight, we throw it in and it tends to take down those cravings and stuff too. So each one of these plays a special role in what we have going on. And I'm going to go through those really briefly to show you. But I wanted to show you that's why we run this test sometime. If we've done everything, people come and say, I want to be as healthy as I can. It's important to know what's going on in your gut biome with the bad characters and the good characters. This is just another follow-up, we keep going with that. Now, what difference does it make whether you have one kind of bacteria or 1,000 different kind of bacteria? It's because each one plays a little different role of what it does. So this one here produces lactic acid, which lactic acid is actually used for food by other bacteria. So the bacteria that produce your vitamins need lactic acid to do so. Your lactic acid is in your muscles, not in your digestive tract. So that's what they do. They feed other bacteria. They can also inhibit bad bacteria. There are certain bad bacteria that don't like lactic acid, so it kills them. So it helps the good bacteria grow, kills out the bad ones. It lowers the pH in the gut. So where I talked about you need to have that alkalinity to help digest things and also to keep good things where they're supposed to be, it does that. Improves digestion, boosts the immune system. This next section of what they feed on, I don't want you to remember that or anything. I just want you to notice what they are. This is going to be a reoccurring theme over and over and over again. I'll get you a list of what I think is important to eat here as we go along, but it's important. So another bacteria, this one here is producing the short-chain fatty acids, which control your immune system. Basically, it breaks down the carbohydrates and then again, takes care of things. But if you start looking this list, a lot of the same things show up on the list, and then we start adding in some other things in here. And if you notice, they're vegetables and fiber-rich foods. Akkermansia, this is the one I was talking about that has a lot to do with feeling full and not craving stuff. And it also helps take down the over-thickening of mucus on the inside of the gut lining. Sometimes maybe you've seen, if you go to the bathroom, sometimes some people have mucus on their stool. That mucus will be, when you have lost the Akkermansia out of there, you start producing too much mucus, you can't digest that food. The mucus puts a barrier up there you can't get through. This helps make the right barrier so that you get the nutrients that you need there. It's also important for hormone balance, particularly ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hormone that makes you hungry or not hungry, and Akkermansia is very good for that. If you start looking again, all your fermented things, your vegetables, your fruits, your whole grains, your chicory, things like that. Onions and garlic come up pretty often in here. You got to make sure that if you don't have a sensitivity to them, they're in the top 12 things of sensitivity, onions and garlic. These bacteria also produce the short-chain fatty acids, but also they maintain the gut barrier again. They're the ones that are helping you actually give the chemicals to your cells to make a thick lining so you don't get what we call leaky gut. They're anti-inflammatory. They help with lactose production. They actually break down lactose. So people that are lactose intolerant, that don't have this, have a major problem. People that are lactose intolerant, that you tend to get a little lactose even here and there from time. When they have a good, healthy gut flora with this in it, they don't have that problem. And then this one also helps with estrogen balance in particular. Again, we're looking at whole grains. We're looking at vegetables. We're looking at all the fermented foods, berries, dark chocolate, tea, and coffee. Viruses. These are a few of the viruses. Viruses are hard to study. When I worked in the lab, we would grow viruses. I worked in a CDC laboratory for a while, and in the regular hospital. When you try to grow viruses, they are the most finicky thing to grow in the world. You have to have them on a plate where it moves all the time. If it even changes the speed, they may die. If the temperature changes more than a degree or two, they die. It's light kills them, and so they were very hard to grow. And so studying them to figure out what they do in the digestive tract is going to take some time. And we're getting better at it. We're doing more DNA studies to know what's there. But these three viruses in particular, they help keep away the bad bacteria, especially Clostridium difficile. So individuals that are taking like ivermectin or antivirals and then turn around and end up in the hospital and take some kind of antibiotic, their likelihood of getting C. diff goes through the roof drastically. So just be aware of that. And I'll talk about how you take care of that in a little bit. and then it creates your gut lining, the viruses do. They like almost the same stuff that the bacteria do. Fungi. This first fungi up here, Saccharomyces boulardii, is the one that if you can keep people on this, when you give them high-dose antibiotics, especially elderly people, when you put them on Saccharomyces boulardii, you can take it in a combination, but usually it comes as its own probiotic. You can keep away C. diff most of the time. And so I've had individuals that have had C. diff once or twice, almost lose their lives, and they're scared about going on antibiotics. We put them on Saccharomyces boulardii, and we can keep that from happening. So it's an important one to have. Candida albicans. In balance, when it's in the right balance, it's very good. It helps you break down fibers. It makes food for all the bacteria and all the other critters in your gut. If you notice when I was talking about fermented foods, every time you keep seeing fermented foods, fermented foods, fermented foods, well, this makes fermented foods. So a lot of times, if you get a little fermented food in, you don't have to eat it all the time. If you get a little fermented food in here and there, and you're feeding the fermented food what it needs to have, it repopulates itself, it keeps going. I will say this, most people don't eat vegetables. Most people aren't eating complex carbs. And so they think they're eating well, but they're eating processed carbs. They're not eating vegetables. My favorite one ever is individuals that come in and they're like, oh, I'm a vegetarian. I'm a vegetarian. I'm just a vegetarian. That's okay. What do you eat? Corn on the cob, cream corn, this. Well, they're a grainitarian. They're not a vegetarian. That's a grain. And that happens quite often. So that's one of the things when we're talking about fermented foods, get the fermentation in, and then feed it and keep it going. Archaea. These are the little guys. They're kind of like little jelly guys that grow. Smithii in particular is one that produces methane, which helps take a hydrogen group away from other bacteria. Some bacteria, when they have too much hydrogen, they actually produce chemicals that are inflammatory. They actually produce chemicals that are very bad for you and make you sick. This one takes that away from them. It changes the pH in you and produces methane in it. So they're a gas producer, but they're saving you from other problems. They like fermented food. Everything here, again, you're seeing the replay over and over and over again. The most common things that people are doing right now to destroy their gut, antibiotic use. Am I saying don't use antibiotics? No. There is going to be a time in life, definitely throughout life, probably multiple times in your life, that you need antibiotics. Before antibiotics, the life expectancy, I think, was 48 years old was the average life expectancy. And so we now have a life expectancy which is dropping here in the United States. I think it's now 77 years old. It was closer to 80. But antibiotics made the difference from 48 to 80 in that. So I'm not saying don't use them, but when you use them, you got to make sure and get the gut flora back up to where it should be really quickly. It's kind of like I always think of the gut biome as being a zoo. And when we were primitive men, it was kind of just a wild thing. It just kind of grew, and we were eating stuff that we were supposed to and feeding the zoo, and they were all wild. Well, now we're not primitive men. We're getting our food everywhere. Now we kind of have a little caged animal in there that we have to feed the right things now. Before, it just got it on its own. Well, antibiotics are one of those things we didn't have. Now we have it. We have to put the things back in the cage. After we go and kill them all out, we exterminated them all, we got to put them right back in the cage. Food preservatives. Probably our number one detriment to our health right now is, I'm going to say number 2, because I'm working on next month. Next month, I'm going to be talking on seed oils. Food preservatives are probably number 2. And David told me about a book a year and a half ago or so. Help me out here. Ultra-processed people. Ultra-processed people. If you want a good read, it's probably one of the best reads on food preservatives. In his book, he comments on one-dose toxicity, meaning that basically the FDA here in the United States has approved that you can put enough preservatives in a food as long as one dose of it isn't toxic, you can put it in. So that means if a potato chip bag says you can eat, or a serving size is 6 potato chips, they can put enough poison in that potato chip, 6 potato chips, to kill all the bugs, kill all the viruses, everything around it, as long as it doesn't make you sick. The problem is, who eats the 6 potato chips? You may go and eat the 6 potato chips. You may go have the hot dog afterwards. You may have this afterwards. You've may quadrupled what's the toxic level for you and the bacteria. So Food preservatives are probably number 2 on the list. I'm going to go back up. Chronic stress. The reason chronic stress destroys the immune system is your body produces corticosteroids, which takes down your immune system. Well, it also takes down the processes of your gut flora in there. And so that's why chronic stress will do it. I know the world's a stressful place, but you also don't have to make drama. Stay off Facebook and commenting on things you shouldn't, and have to take care of it. Lack of sleep. You know, sleep hygiene, I've given talks on sleep hygiene before, and people are like, well, I just can't sleep. Well, usually there's a reason why you can't sleep. Either we have a hormone imbalance, let's take care of it. You have a B vitamin issue, maybe you have a genetic issue, let's figure it out, take care of it. But most of the time, it's sleep hygiene. People are not having a routine bedtime. They're not getting up at the same time. They're not doing a routine that helps them sleep. So you can help your gut bacteria by getting a sleep routine. Certain medications, NSAIDs, so like your Tylenol and those play a role here. I mentioned ivermectin. Proton pump inhibitors. When you're stopping your body from producing acid in your gut, you basically just opened up the gate. It'd be like having your house and somebody saying, okay, you're like, hey, I'm tired of that door, that screen door slamming up against there all the time. I'm just going to open the door up so it doesn't slam anymore. I'm going to take it off the hinges. When you take a proton pump inhibitor, there's times you have to. That should be temporary. That should be 10 to 30 days max. But if you're taking it over that, we need to figure out what the problem is. But when you take it for a long period of time, you opened up the door and you're letting all kinds of things in. Most people get H. pylori because they were on a proton pump inhibitor. It actually thins the digestive lining and makes you have problems. So there is a time and place for every medication. There is a purpose for every medication. It's let's use it to get past something and let's fix the problem. Let's go back over there. Low fiber. If you notice when I went through there, everything in there fed off of fiber and fed off fermented foods. Fermented foods are broken down fiber. So every one of these healthy bacteria needs fiber to live off of. And so it's just a thing there. Environmental toxins, we could almost put food preservatives in that in the same ballpark. Pesticides, plastics, and heavy metal. I mentioned in the digestive one last month that plastics is becoming very interesting. There's a study they've been doing off the coast of Newfoundland for about 30 years on the birds there and plastics in particular. They've been studying how much they're ingesting plastics and everything, and they saw the number rapidly going up in these birds. And at first, these birds got very big. They got very fat where they almost couldn't fly anymore. And then now the plastic levels have reached such critical mass that now they're all getting very skinny and they're dying out in multiple numbers. And they think it's because the microplastics are playing a detrimental role in their gut bacteria. So we're having a problem with microplastics. And, you know, for the most part, we have switched everything metal to plastics. Even in our houses now, we're doing plastic pipes. And they say, well, they're BPA free. There's still microplastics in it. So that's a scary thing. Even the filters, the Brita filters are made with plastic. So it's hard to find any way to truly get away from them right now. And then heavy metals. We're doing better and better with that. We went away from metal pipes, so we're using plastic. But heavy metal consumption, that we're doing a lot better. Where this really plays a role still nowadays are your people working the oil fields, touching the metal pipes all the time, ingesting the dust and everything. Welders in particular, auto workers, that kind of thing, have a problem with heavy metals in the digestive tract. Alcohol consumption. This one is probably higher here than any other place I've been, is true. And it's a social thing. No one stands up and says, hey, it's too much. It's kind of it seems like it's more of a just a given it's going to be a thing. It's actually a problem here. Where I'm seeing this play a role more here than anything is your gut, when you drink alcohol, not only are you killing out bad bacteria, you don't produce intrinsic factor, which helps you absorb nutrients and vitamins. So we have a lot of individuals that actually are overweight here and larger, and you think, well, man, they must be eating a lot. No, actually, they're not absorbing the minerals and vitamins they're supposed to, so their body's sucking in everything it can, trying to do this. So they're actually swollen, not overweight. It's actually a real thing. So alcohol hurts the gut biome. The excessive hygiene practices. This is actually a real thing too. If you go back and look at your shower and look at everything you're using, most all of it now is antibacterial. When you go and you look at the store and you start looking, everything's antibacterial. And even if it doesn't say it, you start looking at the things in it, it's antibacterial. In all honesty, probably most of the time when you clean or bathe, unless you're stinky or you're super dirty, you ought to be using water is what you ought to be using. You know, it's not one of those things where you ought to be cleaning and scouring yourself all the time. So even you go to the bathroom, everybody wants to put soap on and soap up. You're probably much better doing a nice, good cleanse with just water. When you go and have vegetables at home, I was telling them before everybody got here, probably most people freak out, but I don't wash any of my fruits and vegetables or anything when I buy them. And I have my family freaks out about that. They come over, they're upset that I don't wash it. The pesticides are nice to wash off, but you're washing away all of that bacteria that's actually replenishing you. So if something's dirty, you drop it on the floor, or it looks like it's dirty, wash it off. But in general, if you have something clean or it's been bagged, most of the stuff has to be cleaned at the facility before they send it out. It's been washed. And since then, it's been slowly growing new bacteria in there. Most of the things that you're going to catch from fruits and vegetables that are dirty, if you catch something that's bad, your body's going to take care of it. If it's past that, 99.99999% of them are treatable. You'll get a gut bacteria that grows out of things. You get something, we cover it. So most people are cleaning their bodies too much. Most people are cleaning everything that they're doing too much. On the reverse side of this, I have probably 40, 50, maybe 60 hours of microbiology coursework. And when I first took my first course, I didn't eat a leftover. There was nothing that wasn't scrubbed to death. I'd take the scrubber and scrub it, and I'd take and bleach the scrubber before I'd use it again. So I never had an allergy before that time period of my life. And it was within about 6 months of having microbiology and cleaning everything up that I got more allergies than I ever had. And I probably did that for a good 3 or 4 years before one of my good mentors says, you know, you're killing yourself, right? And I was like, no, I'm keeping clean. I'm not going to get sick. He says, yeah, you're getting sick all the time because you're cleaning stuff. And he took me aside and kind of showed me what I've talked tonight. So excessive hygiene is an issue. You know, if things are dirty, I mean, use common sense. But yeah, yes, ma'am.
Can you go back and explain what is the intrinsic factor?
Yeah, intrinsic factor is a chemical that is used for you to absorb B vitamins, particularly B12. That's why most of your true alcoholics, you will see that they lack methyl B12. And if you give them methyl B12, they feel 1,000 times better. Their liver starts working better. It's not going to cure it because they're still pumping in alcohol. But that same individual, if you look at them, they will have usually what looks like the Grand Canyon on their tongue. They're missing B12. They'll have huge tongues. So next time you know an alcoholic, say, hey, let me see your tongue. And they'll have a huge, huge thing there. Individuals that also have a bad gut biome will have that same crack too. But it's more noticeable in people that don't digest their food properly, and the most in alcoholics.
So they lose the intrinsic factor.
Yeah, it's a chemical. Yeah, they're no longer producing intrinsic factor. Yeah.
Can you start reproducing it again?
Yeah. Usually getting the gut flora correctly, stopping alcohol. Alcohol, when it goes in, it goes straight through the gut lining. It doesn't even make it to the small intestines anywhere like that. It actually goes in and goes straight through the stomach lining, I should say. And when it goes into there, it hurts the cells that produce intrinsic factor. You have your parietal cells, and you have, I can't remember the other cell off the top of my head. Parietal cells produce some intrinsic factor, but they also produce your hydrochloric acid. So alcoholics tend to burn up those cells inside their stomach, so their nutrition just drops drastically. I mean, like super quick. Most people that drink in excess are some of the most malnourished individuals. They don't look that way because they're swollen, but they're swollen because they're inflamed, not because they're fat most of the time. So alcohol is an interesting one. Did that answer that question? Perfect. Some supplements and oils. I mentioned or oil of oregano after I remembered it. That is your oils, your essential oils. I love people who do essential oils. I have people all the time that come to me and say, hey, will you be a representative, sell doTERRA? Will you sell this one? Will you sell that one? And no, not usually. But there's times when people come to me, I'll say, yeah, you can use this oil and stuff. But I love the fact, one of the things they commonly say is that, oh, well, they don't have any side effects. I will tell you, anything that has a positive can definitely have a negative. And in the case of a lot of your oils kill out the viruses, so they work very well for it. If you're sick, they kill out the fungi, they kill out the archaea, they even kill out some bacteria. When you're sick, great. use something. Use the oils. Use that thing. When you're not sick, be careful what you're throwing in because it does have a side effect. You may be killing things you don't want to. Whether you're treating for viruses, whether you're treating for fungus, do its job and then back off of it. It shouldn't. There's something a matter. If you're having to do it all the time for the same reoccurring thing, it's kind of like I talked about the yeast infections. Either it's a bad diet thing, or maybe you're catching it from a spouse or somebody else. Take care of it. Seed oils. I'm going to talk about this next month, but seed oils in general are probably the fastest way to mess up your gut biome. Every cell in your body and the outside of every cell of bacteria, viruses, everything is made of a lipid layer. Lipids are fats. Seed oils are fats. When they make a seed oil, it should be a solid block of grease is what it should be. They hydrolyze it. They put hydrogen in it, make it look like watery stuff. When it goes into your body, it changes its place with the fat that's in your lining. It pulls out that one and drops itself in. Well, your body's made to have real oil around there, real fat around there. As soon as you replace it with a fake one, things pour into your cells that shouldn't be, things come out of your cells that shouldn't be, and it kills a lot of things. So,
Can you give us a list of seed oils?
Yeah, cottonseed oil was the very first one in like the 1940s. They made Crisco out of it. Canola oil, corn oil, soy oil. Yeah, anything they say vegetable oil, but is not a vegetable. It's funny. They're not making it out of vegetables. They're making it out of grains. So it's actually a farce all the way around. But those are your ones. Your good oils basically are your lard, your tallow. Those are still your best. And it's been a farce of them saying that they're bad for you. They're actually much, much better for you. Like I said, that'll be a whole talk next time. And I think it's important. That's probably the thing that most people don't understand that's really a detriment to them right now.
It's easier just to give a list of what are good fats.
Exactly.
So many that are bad, like we keep like 4 in our house.
Yeah.
Avocado.
Yeah, we do avocado, coconut, olive oil, and then I do pork fat and beef fat. I render it down and use it all the time. So you keep all your bacon fat, basically. So where are we getting our good bacteria from? Our mothers is the number one place. When you come out, you're actually, I want to say you're sterile. So you're perfectly clean before you pass out of the vagina there. When babies are taken out C-section, they get some bacteria on them, but not nearly what they should. So in all honesty, moms probably ought to take a baby after they're born and actually put them in their lap and everything else and kind of rub them around. I mean, it would be a goofy thing, but you're actually seeding that baby. And I know some midwives that do that. If they're there when like they'll be doing midwife and then they have to have a C-section, they usually come back and coach them to do that. Environment, soil, plants, grocery carts. The person I talked about going and hugging the person you want to be like, you're going to get it from other people, touching people, shaking hands. You know, I mean, the whole bump thing during COVID, I get it. It's over with. Shake people's hands and you'll do a lot better that way. Especially kids. Kids nowadays probably don't get enough hugs, probably don't get enough interaction like they did when we were kids. I mean, we wrestled and it was okay. You know, you go pee and things like that and you got down on the ground, wrestle, you wrestled out in the playground. They don't let them do it. No, don't touch each other. So it's a different situation. Fermented foods. And there's actually more fermented foods in this, especially we got fermented Brussels sprouts the other day with fermented onions in it and stuff. So any of your fermented foods are good for this. You don't need to eat them all the time. So if you go up here to Albertsons and you get the sushi, take the little bit of kimchi and eat it. As long as you keep eating it, that'll last you the rest of your life if you keep the things coming into it and you don't poison them out. And then probiotic supplements. When I first got out of working in the hospital and with all my first classes, I was under the impression that we needed to crank in the probiotics. You know, I thought we had to crank them in. And so I would go to the store and I would look for the probiotic that had 84 billion on it. And I would buy that probiotic. Probably the biggest mistake you can make. You're talking about when you pour in too many of one thing, it's a balance and you're pushing out the rest. You are much better off having a moderate count of probiotic and having more strains in it. I think you guys talked about Spore last time. Spore is a great one. They do a very good job at it. I like to mix up probiotics. If you came into me, I tend to look at what symptoms you're having. If we do a stool sample, I know exactly what your levels are. And I may tell you one time you come in and say, hey, let's change up that probiotic. Or, hey, I want you to buy 2 probiotics. Here's the 2 I want you to take. This one has 10 strains in it. This one has Saccharomyces boulardii in it. And I mix it up. It's based on what you're doing. You can't go wrong if you're taking antibiotics of throwing in anything. I don't care. Throw in something because you need something. A lot of doctors will say, oh, don't take that probiotic while you're on antibiotics because it's just going to kill it. That's the most ridiculous thing in the world. If you're on an antibiotic, you need to be putting probiotics in. Get the strain with the most different kinds in it. I think, in my opinion, I like a strain that always has Strep Thermophilus in it. And I don't think I have that listed anywhere here. Strep Thermophilus is the one that grows in your mouth, in your sinus cavity. It grows down by your reproductive organs. It keeps you from getting yeast infections. It keeps you from getting secondary infections after antibiotics. And I always like, if you're on an antibiotic, make sure you always get Strep Thermophilus in there. If you're on a strong antibiotic that's killing out everything, you want Saccharomyces boulardii in there.
I have questions.
Yes.
So going back to the birth and breastfeeding, I read somewhere that a colostrum supplement is good for. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So it depends. Nowadays, there's a ton of people getting casein sensitivities. And so it's about a 50-50 shot of whether it's going to bother you or not for people. If you're having any problem with dairy, when you go to colostrum, it's going to be super high. And anybody who's selling colostrum out there that says, oh no, it won't bother you if you have dairy, oh no, it's good for you, they're full of crap. If you have a casein sensitivity, and a lot of people do now have a casein sensitivity. So
how do you know if you have a casein sensitivity?
Well, you can test it, but usually adult acne is one good sign of it. If you come up and feel the back of your arms, especially triceps, above your elbow here, and you're having what is kind of like goosebumps on there, most people think that's dry skin. Usually that's the first telltale sign of a casein sensitivity. Anxiety is the second sign. And I think last talk, I talked about my son Casper. When he gets casein, the boy is just loopy and crazy. As a little kid in preschool, he would get in trouble every time he got it. He'd go to grandma's house, they would give him dairy. We ended up testing him. His casein sensitivity was off the charts. And I have to look and see what testing is out here. It used to be pretty cheap. It was like $20 for that testing. So it was worth doing. But colostrum is very good, extremely good if you don't have a sensitivity. I will say this, since it's become very popular, if it's not expensive, it's probably not colostrum. It's probably not. Colostrum's first milk, and there's only so much of it produced. And so if you're finding it cheap, it's not.
Right.
So, so how to keep the gut healthy? Feed the good. So the foods we're talking about, starve the bad. Don't put in the sugars. Don't put in the alcohol. Don't put in the things that they're going to be eating on. Replenish the missing. So if you've taken antibiotics, if you've taken supplements that kill out, put new probiotics back in. This is less about probiotics and less about replenishing that way than it is getting the right food. So I'm going to get to that here in a second. And then reduce the many. There's times when you have too many bacteria of a certain kind, and there are supplements that you can take for that other than antibiotics. One of the leading supplements, this is not in the notes anywhere, is monolaurin. Monolaurin is a little piece of coconut fat. And usually people even that have, on a pure monolaurin, people that have coconut issues will not have an issue with it. Always be careful with that. But that is a little piece of coconut fat. Bad bacteria love it. They absolutely love it. And they'll come up and they'll eat all they can and they explode and die. Good bacteria eat it extremely slowly. And they eat it very slow and they flourish. So it's one of those ones, if we see that you have SIBO, dysbiosis, something like that, it's usually my go-to right off the bat. I give you monolaurin and it does a wonderful job of it. Some people that have digestive issues, we have to put them on monolaurin forever because as soon as we take them off of it, they replenish the wrong ones. So monolaurin is incredible. In head-to-head studies against rifaximin, it beat rifaximin in taking care of H. pylori, which is the main one people get ulcers with. It beat it in head-to-head studies, and it beat it bad. Rifaximin, I don't know what it is now, but Rifaximin a year or two ago for a prescription for the real thing was like $1,000 to $1,500 for a prescription. Monolaurin is like $24 a bottle or something like that, and it works better. Yeah, yeah. So it works. So common things to create a healthy gut biome. Fermented foods. So we saw the yogurt, the kefir. If you have a dairy problem, you don't have to go with those. You can come in and you get the sauerkraut. You can get the kimchi. You can get dairy-free yogurts though. So you can go and get your coconut yogurt. You can go get your coconut cheeses, things like that. They will still work well for that. Sauerkraut, I will tell you, if you're going to get sauerkraut, don't waste your time getting it in a can. All the bacteria are killed on it. If you're going to get sauerkraut and expect to get the nutrients out of it and get the bacteria you need to get the one that's usually in the refrigerated section. So even a jar out on the counter has been poisoned to the point that it won't grow anything. It's been cooked down that much. Your cans have been cooked. They put it in the refrigerator because if they don't, it goes bad. That's because there's live critters growing in it that are going to help you out. So if you're just going and buying sauerkraut out of a can, forget it. Kimchi, same thing. You're looking for kimchi that's been refrigerated to make a difference for you. Fruits, several of your good bacteria, the only thing they do like is fruits. Individuals that have a fructose sensitivity and stuff, they can get away with vegetables, especially your higher sugar vegetables like carrots and things. But fruits do play a role, especially berries. Berries are a plus when it comes to this. Vegetables. You almost can't go wrong on vegetables. Again, I'd like to say corn is not a vegetable. That happens all the time. And I'll also tell you why you're here too. Eggs are not dairy. I get that all the time. People will come in and I'll talk to this person, tell them they have a casein sensitivity, and I'll say, okay, so you can't have dairy. And they're like, what am I going to do for my eggs? And it's because eggs are in that part of the grocery store. So eggs are not dairy. Whole grains. Whole grains are an incredible source of carbohydrates and fibers. Most people, when they're trying to lose weight and things, they steer way far clear of whole grains. But whole grains actually help you out a lot of times lose weight. A whole grain, let's say you eat processed grain, you go and eat a piece of bread or something like that, your blood sugar spikes because it's already ground up, all the sugar is available as soon as you eat it, and your blood sugar drops. Then you're craving again, and you go like this here, and you're just hungry all the time. When you put in whole grains, and I'll have a list of them in a while, whole grains go in, you can't break them down very well. So your blood sugar, basically the sugar on the outside of the whole grain comes off, your blood sugar goes up a little bit. Well, then the bacteria go to work, and they start breaking down the fiber in it. And when they use it, they're making the vitamins they need. They're making all the chemicals they need. They're actually fermenting it. It's working out great. Your blood sugar just goes up here and stays here, and it may stay that way for 4 to 6 hours. So you got enough to function, and you're not going wham, wham. So individuals that want to lose weight, a lot of times I will do a half a cup of complex carbs 2 or 3 times a day, and it actually helps with that process. Also keeps the bowels moving, keeps the critters fed in there. Legumes. Legumes are one of those ones that's interesting. They either work very well for people or not work well for people. And a lot of times it's the lectin content of it that people react to, or they produce too much gas with it. And sometimes we can change the gut bacteria and do that, but individuals real quickly know whether they do good with legumes or not. How can we eat best to maintain our health? This is a basis of a diet plan that I do. Now I'd call it a lifestyle plan instead of a diet plan. It's probably a better way to put it. But this one in particular is for women. This is where I start out just baseline. This would be a baseline. If I don't know you, I would do this for you. I change it up based on what I'm trying to accomplish with individuals. But it's the base of how it works out. If you were going to eat healthy and you weren't caught up in American society and you said, I want to know how to eat healthy, I would say, okay, well, here's your protein choices. Eggs, chicken, turkey, fish, lean beef, pork in moderation, tree nuts, no peanuts. Peanuts are not a nut. They're actually a legume. And I'll get back to that here in a second. Complex carbs, oatmeal, brown rice, quinoa, sweet potatoes, beans. These ones give you the fiber that all those little critters need to eat in you, and they do very well at maintaining a steady blood sugar, keeping insulin levels well. And like I said a while ago, they help you in a diet process where you want to be steady and live forever. A lot of individuals want to go and they want to eat carnivore to lose weight and get healthy. They want to go become vegetarian to do it. And if you go one way or the other, It's interesting. You will be extremely healthy in about 3 months if you go carnivore. Give me 3 years out, and you're sicker than a dog if you stay carnivore. If you go vegetarian, you're going to be extremely healthy in about 3 months. 3 years out, you're going to be extremely sick. In the overall scheme of things, your body needs proteins, carbohydrates, and fats to be healthy. And in this balance is about as healthy as you can get. Vegetables. Any vegetables, fermented vegetables are a plus. I will say this, if you were trying to lose weight, the one other thing I add up here is white potatoes. If you want to gain weight, add in white potatoes. They'll make you gain weight. Take them out and you lose weight. So in here, I'm not doing this to lose weight. I'm just telling you what the perfect healthy diet is. This is actually to maintain. Any vegetables, fermented is a plus. Corn is a grain, not a vegetable. This has been a big topic of debate, as you can tell as I'm saying it, because I keep saying it over and over and over again. Any fruit, berries are a plus. When we're talking about the gut biome, the things I listed here are the best things to have the best healthy diet you can. Can you live this way? Absolutely yes, I live this way. Avoid the big six, and maybe sometime I'll give a lecture on this, but the big six here actually happen to be the top 6 things that people are sensitive to in their diet, but they also happen to be the top 6 pro-inflammatory foods that we eat. They're the most commonly inflammatory food. Wheat, our wheat is not what it used to be. Our corn is not what it used to be. Our corn is actually almost pure sugar and candy now compared to what it is. We've made it into be that. Our wheat is mostly lectin. It used to be 5% lectin in the 70s. Now it's 65% lectin. So we cannot break it down. The bacteria in our gut cannot break it down. And it actually scars up the inside of your intestines when you eat it. Even the bugs won't eat more. Soy has been changed so much so that, first of all, I'm not so sure we were ever supposed to eat soy. Soy should have been like a bean. So when you go to China and you eat soy there, and I've been there a couple times, soy, they actually serve it to you, it looks like a pea. And you eat it like a pea. It's not hardened. It's not like our soy when we harvest it out of the field. Nothing like it. So our soybeans have been modified to turn into oil and things like that. It's actually not an edible thing anymore. And we put it in everything. And the reason we put it in stuff is because it makes a great flour. It's a really loose flour, and you can put it in with wheat, and it keeps it all from sticking. But the second you get it wet, it makes a really good dough. So that's the purpose of soy in most of our foods. It has tofu. Yeah, tofu is a perfect example of it too. That would be this. So, but it depends where you get your tofu from. If you get it from here in the United States, it's not good for you. If you get your tofu overseas, it's totally different. If you get it from China or Japan and that, most people don't though. And then peanuts or sugar. Let's say dairy. We talked about dairy. Sugar. When you throw in sugar, you're feeding the bad bacteria. Most part, they should be eating just a little bit, and that's how they like to get their sugar. They eat it really slow. They get it out of the complex carbs. When you throw in sugar, it's a problem. Back 100 years ago, a household would have a bag of sugar. They'd usually get it for Christmas. That was a common Christmas gift, was to get a bag of sugar, and that would be the sugar that would last them all year. That's all they would have. And everything they cooked, they would use apples, they would use berries, they'd use things like that to sweeten. They might sprinkle a little sugar on the top of the pie, and that would be the only sugar in it. Now, there are individuals that are getting over a bag of sugar a week in their diet. I mean, when you look at the sodas, when you look at things, people have coffee and half the cup is full of sugar, and they have 3 of those a day. Yeah, I must have pointed it out. Yeah. So it's a real thing. And so you're feeding the wrong bacteria. You will have gut problems if you're putting in that much sugar.
Like with your honeys and
Yeah.
maple syrup.
You're better. You still need to use it at a minimum. You will always want to put in the minimum what it's going to take to get it done. I haven't lectured about this for a while, but your taste buds change every 28 days. And so literally, if you take out all the sugar out of your diet, in 28 days, things that you never thought were sweet in your life will be the sweetest thing in the world. You'll bite into a carrot and go, oh my God, when did carrots become like candy, you know? The funny thing is that threshold on those receptors, the other way changes within 48 hours. So if you decide, and this is a perfect example, we go usually to Michigan for Thanksgiving and visit a family there, and they have candy laying everywhere. And I don't know why, but you'll be standing there talking and you think, oh, well, there's an M&M. It'll be okay. I'll eat that M&M. And then next thing you know, you eat another M&M. And by the time I leave there 48 hours after I got there, it's like I can't get enough sugar in my body. It's amazing how fast it turns. Peanuts. Nobody had a peanut sensitivity when I was a kid. My whole school, I can't think of a single person Now you can't go to a single classroom that doesn't have a peanut sensitivity. Most of this has to do with they took a piece of E. coli bacteria and they took a gene out of it and they put it into the hybridized peanuts here. And so when we eat peanuts now, our bodies think it's an invader of E. coli bacteria and we react to it. So we're reacting to it as if we just got bad spinach at the grocery store and we're having that same kind of reaction to it. And that's why it's that way. And people say, well, I get organic peanut butter. Well, I'm sorry, unless they're growing it in a greenhouse with a HEPA filter on it, if I'm growing my peanuts here and they're GMO perfectly fine, and within 13 to 20 miles away, they're growing hybridized peanuts here, when these are pollinated, the pollen comes over, that gene is transferred to those peanuts. And yeah, you're calling it organic because you put organic seed in there, but it's hybridized. So now it has a little piece of DNA from E. coli in it. They do that. They did E. coli so they could use a chemical on it called Prost. Prost is equivalent for Roundup for peanuts. They put it on the fields. It doesn't kill the peanuts, but it kills all the other weeds around it. And so that's why they did it that way. Similar thing with soy too, by the way. Soy used, I don't think it was E. coli, but they used another bacteria to make it so it was Roundup ready. So most of the soy you get has been contaminated where your body thinks it's actually a foreign invader. So those big six, if you avoid those big six, you lean out, you feel better, your health problems don't go away, but I gotta say they're much less than what they ever were. Thyroid issues, psoriatic arthritis, gut issues. When you take that, I wrote my master's on this thing here, and several of my professors have taken it since then and published it and used it because they're like, yeah, this works. And my patients that actually do it, it works. Any spices and herbs can be added as long as they don't contain dairy or sugar. So your McCormick spices, any of your regular spices there work. How does this look in a real world in your day? So breakfast, 4 ounces of protein. So you could have an egg, you could have some pork sausage, beef sausage, bacon, whatever. You could have 2 eggs. Half a cup of oatmeal is what I usually put in the morning time. This is cooked, so you're only going to put in about a quarter cup. It's not much there, just a little bit. You're just trying to feed the bacteria. In my house, I say food is fuel. And so really, if you can get away from the thought of thinking, oh, wow, I'm doing this because I want to stuff my face and I want to it tastes good, it can still taste good. In fact, as your taste buds change in 28 days. So I do a little bit of oatmeal. I throw in some almond milk, mine unsweetened almond milk. Sometimes I do oat milk, that kind of thing. And then I throw in a half a cup fruit, blueberries, raspberries. I throw in sometimes apple with cinnamon on it. And when your taste buds change, that's actually like a dessert in the morning time. I can make that morning breakfast and eat it in less than 10 minutes. I can make it in about 4 minutes. It takes me about 6 minutes to eat it, and that's the way it goes. I have a bottle of water over here, and everybody says, oh, plastic, she just told me plastic bad. Yeah, you probably shouldn't have bottled water. That's the only way I drink water because otherwise I don't find myself drinking water. So at least I'm getting my water in that way. So I should just put 8 ounces of water or 16 ounces of water. Mid-morning. And if you notice, this one's for women. 10 nuts. And I don't care, as long as it's not peanuts, 10 nuts, it's usually what fits in the palm of your hand. Like if you close your hand up, it's what fits in the palm of your hand. The reason you put this in here, when you have that breakfast with that much protein, that much carbs, and that much sugar from the fruit, you throw in these nuts and it causes a thermodynamic effect that you actually kind of keep the amount of calories. You'll actually burn weight off and burn more calories than you would any other way. It causes a thermodynamic effect because you have fat and protein right between your 2 meals. It actually works extremely well. So not all calories are created equal is basically what it comes down to. These actually make you burn more fat, and that protein and fat at that time of morning keeps you from getting hungry and craving sugar when you eat lunch. When you put in fat and protein then, when you go to lunch, you're not like, okay, I really need a sandwich and I need that ice cream on top of it and I need this candy and all that. That keeps you from having cravings when you come to lunch. It's not really enough to do a whole lot calorie-wise because you actually burn most of it up thermodynamically, but it keeps you from craving. Lunchtime, 4 ounces of protein. I don't care what you get. Go over to the protein list. And so this could be a thing of chili. You could have your protein in your chili. You could throw in your beans and you could throw in your vegetables. You got chili. You could have a beef stew here. You could have a salad. You could have basically a salad with chicken. You could have your vegetables on here. And if you want to, you throw more vegetables in, you most likely get your carbs. Otherwise, you can throw something like quinoa on there. You can even throw sweet potato chunks on there, anything like that. A lot of times, if you're getting root tubers like radishes, beets, things like that, you're going to get your carbs in that way too. But I like soups. Today I had brown rice, I had chicken, and I had vegetables. I had broccoli with it, is what I had. So, and I make up those meals, and I usually do most of my meals on a Sunday afternoon for lunch. So I will prepare, on Sunday, I will prepare a big pot of brown rice. And I just have enough. It lasts all the way until next Saturday night. If you keep it in the refrigerator, it doesn't go bad. Maybe it ferments. Maybe you get good stuff out. But anyway, it's good. Sweet potatoes. I take my sweet potatoes, and I usually buy a bunch of them. I like bigger than smaller. And I take a casserole dish. I put aluminum foil in it. I stack up the sweet potatoes on it. I put it in the oven at 400 degrees for 2 hours. When the stove goes off, I let it sit in there for another 2 or so hours until it cools down. I take a knife, I snip off the end, slice the belly, put it in a big mixing bowl, and then I just run the knife through it. So it's chunks. And I serve that out for my meals, sometimes for lunch, or every night I'll have sweet potatoes, just a little bit. You don't take much. A half a cup is only about that much. That's all you need to keep you from getting hungry and to burn the right amount of calories. And a cup and a half of veggies, and that's pretty much, the fruit. In afternoon, we are burning calories down because we did thermodynamic in the morning time. If you don't tell your body that you're going to give it food, and that's what this is, you're giving it a little sugar, you're giving it a little pep. If you do that in the afternoon, you keep up ketosis and you keep burning fat. If you try to come back in this afternoon and you throw in nuts, you can get away with it for about 4 days. And you'll lose weight, you'll be doing fine, everything's going your way, and all of a sudden your body will say, you know what? I think you're trying to starve me. I think you're really trying to starve me, and your metabolism starts creeping down. So you'll see people losing weight, and they're doing really good, and all of a sudden they just get tired. They're getting exhausted. It's because they're not doing it the right way. Weight loss done correctly, you're going to lose about 2.5 pounds. Maybe to begin with, you'll lose more, but then after that, you're going to lose about 2.5 pounds a week. When you're doing it correctly, it's 2.5 pounds a week. Nobody likes that. Everybody wants fast, but if you want to make it a lifestyle and keep it off, otherwise you go down, you pop back up. If you do it slow and do it a lifestyle, it stays off. That's why that cup of fruit's in there, is to make it so that you continue going down. The last line here, if needed, I don't know anybody who needs that. On athletes, I throw that line in, and it's actually a full line, and sometimes I even throw another line in for athletes, especially young athletes and professional athletes. I put this in here because I had so many people tell me, oh my God, I'm going to be hungry. I'm going to be hungry. I'm going to be hungry. And I was like, okay, let me give you an escape hatch. If you're hungry, you can throw in more protein. You can get some rolled up turkey breasts. You can throw in a steak. I don't care. And throw in a cup of veggies. I don't think I've ever had anybody other than athletes ever use that line. So that's why it's there. The next one is men's. If you look, the only thing that's different on men's is I up the protein, up the nuts, the fat here, and up the carbohydrates. These are baselines for people. When I write them up for individuals, I write them up, and a lot of times, especially if I'm doing weight loss, I may bump up the protein even higher to begin with. I'm trying to do things depending on your size, depending on your weight, and then I manipulate it. You come in about every 2 or 3 weeks. I do a UA to see if you're burning fat, to see if you're going down. We weigh you, and then I change it. You know, sometimes it's a goofy thing. Sometimes you'll come in and you're not losing weight. I'll say, okay, we're going to raise up the carb in midday, and you'd be like, what the heck? I'm like, yeah, we slowed down your metabolism, we're picking it up. Or I might say, okay, we need to bump up your protein, or we're going to drop your protein. I change it around, but this is your general baseline. I think if everybody in here ate this way, you would real quickly find that your weight stabilizes, you feel better, inflammation goes down, your gut feels better in the end.
Should you not drink before, during, or after a meal?
If you're healthy and you're producing enough digestive enzymes, it doesn't matter. If you're not producing enough digestive enzymes, you probably need to supplement digestive enzymes. So most of the time, most people that I put on a digestive enzyme don't have to stay on it forever. Your body, it tends to like prime the pump and you start doing it on your own. There's an exception to that. People that have had severe stomach issues or been alcoholics, sometimes I gotta leave them on forever. And then as you get older, you stop producing digestive enzyme. It's a state of being that happens. It's probably one of the things that makes you old, truthfully. You stop producing bile salts out of your liver. You stop producing amylase out of your pancreas. Older people tend to have drier mouths. They don't produce as much saliva. They don't produce the acid. And so you give them digestive enzymes, and a lot of times you'll see somebody who's on a downhill slide all of a sudden perk back up from it. So elderly people probably need a digestive enzyme, and part of that helps balance gut flora, but also they digest their food enough so the microbiome can do its job there. Yes.
When would you ideally incorporate the yogurt or sauerkraut?
Yeah, perfect. So most of the time, the dairy I don't do dairy usually just because it's inflammatory to most people. There's some people, so I do genetic analysis for people too, and it's interesting. Some people come in and they actually have lactose persistence. It's only 1 out of 5 people that have it. Most people can't literally break down dairy. It's in their genes that they can't. They can go through their childhood, and at like 5 years old, they can no longer break down dairy. 20% of people can, 1/5 of people can. So usually, if I was going to put in the yogurt, I may do that here in the nuts sometime on people where I put that in. I usually wouldn't do yogurt. I wouldn't usually do kefir. I would usually do up here the fermented vegetables is what I would do, typically. I'm not opposed to the other. Let me also say this. This is the perfect world. I'm not perfect by any means. So there's times I have other stuff. There's times you can't get the right thing. I mean, you just can't do it. I will say here in Cody, most of the time I can go out and I can get a meat, I can get a vegetable, and my carbs are iffy a lot of times. Sometimes it's sweet potato fries probably done in seed oil, which is bad, but it's the best I can do at the moment. You know, I had this evening, I went over to Irma, I got a, what do they call it, bear food salad with no gluten, no dairy. And so basically it was nuts, berries, lettuce, and chicken. It was good. But that's how I get through. Now, I'd say in general, if I was going to say 6 times a year, there's reasons not to eat this way, and usually you don't feel good the next day. Thanksgiving, go enjoy what Grandma used to make. Grandma's recipe. Maybe your cousin's making Grandma's old recipe, and you want to try it out. Try it out. As long as you're not sensitive or have a problem with that, try it out. You got Christmas, go do the same thing. A lot of times I'll say some people do it on New Year's, some people, because you're with family. Some people do it Super Bowl. They're like, man, I remember how those nachos used to taste. I'm going to try those nachos. Usually they're not as good as you think, usually. And then you got Mother's Day, Easter, and your birthday. There's those kind of occasions. If you try to keep clean otherwise, even, let's say you know you can't eat this way all the time. If you say, hey, I'm going to do good 5 days a week, and I'm going to, or maybe 4 days a week, whatever you can get in, 1 day a week. Some people aren't eating vegetables. So probably 25% of my patients don't eat vegetables. Period. Don't eat vegetables. If you want an autistic kid, by the way, don't you eat vegetables and don't let them eat vegetables, and you'll end up with an autistic kid, no doubt about it. Because that inflammation, autism for the most part, and I don't know if anybody says this or not, but autism directly is linked to interleukin 6. Interleukin 6 is an inflammatory element in the brain, interleukin 6. And you can go and look, every kid that has autism has interleukin 6 through the roof. Well, interleukin 6 can be controlled drastically by diet. So maybe this was caused by a vaccine. Maybe it was caused by a genetic proponent, but you can change it drastically. So I've had probably 4 dozen, 5 dozen, maybe 6 dozen families that have kind of said, we will do anything. We need to do something about this. And I basically put their kid on this digestive plan. I then come back and I do their gut sample so we know what their gut bacteria is. And then I do their food sensitivities. I do those things. It's money. It's probably $1,500 at this point. They're willing to do it. We do it. You come back 2 years later, and there's almost no signs of autism there. Once you wait out to 11 years old, and you have a kid that's eating chicken McNuggets and ketchup and French fries, and that's, or mac and cheese. That's the big one. Mac and cheese, chicken McNuggets, ketchup, and French fries, and that's their 99.9% of diet. If you go and take that away from that 11-year-old kid, you better put a padlock on your door at night. They're probably going to kill you. I mean, and I'm not even joking. I'm being dead serious in this. They have such strong withdrawals that they feel like they're dying inside, and they will kill you to get it. And I know parents that have been tried to change things in that teenage years, and their kids literally beat the crap out of them because they won't eat vegetables, they won't do it. And parents are like, well, I'm just not going to bring it in this house. The kids will destroy them for it. So if you have those issues, change it early, it makes a difference. I would say that 11-year-old time period, if you don't get to it by then, it becomes extremely tough.
The interleukin-6 is increased in autism?
Yeah, very high. Yeah. And I've done lectures on that before. And I had a doctor dispute that was in the room with me. And I said, tell you what, go research it and come back and tell me different. And he gave me a call probably 3 or 4 months later. He says, yeah, you're right. You're right. 100% right. So that, there's multiple reasons for interleukin-6 to go up, but that's really a telltale sign. And if you're going to measure the inflammation in an autistic child, that's probably your go-to measure. You measure interleukin-6 before you start treatment, during treatment, and at the end of treatment. You can kind of see it drops when they're doing good. So I have a particular kid that had multiple food sensitivities, autistic, extremely bad autism. Gut flora was off the map, horrible, but he was eating chicken McNuggets and mac and cheese. And I think he was 8 years old, very smart kid and genius, actually. And actually, the way it worked out, he wouldn't listen to his mom, but he came in and I actually set him down like he was a doctor and went over the research with him. I went over my presentation with him. And he said, oh, okay, I need to change this. And he went and changed it himself. Anyway, we watched the interleukin just fall. I mean, the interleukin-6 fall on him. And when I left, he was 14 and a half, 15. And I don't think you could tell he had autism. There was no outward sign in communication. When I first started seeing, he couldn't look at you. He'd sit there and just move, and he always had to be doing something. His mom constantly had to give him the video game. He couldn't do anything else. And at the end, shaking my hand, saying, hey, goodbye, Dr. Thoma, good luck to you, that kind of stuff. So totally everything. And it wasn't just he grew up, he changed.
What is interleukin?
Interleukin-6 is an inflammatory chemical produced by T lymphocytes. So it's basically, most people know that your white blood cells, they know they come up and eat bad bacteria and stuff, but actually what they do more than that is they produce chemicals that go out and basically help other cells do things in your body, whether it helps shut down permeability to other cells so viruses can't get in, or they open up cells to let chemicals out so that when they're sick. Interleukin-6 is one of those ones that basically deals more with neurotransmitters and things in the brain. It's an inflammatory marker for neurotransmitters.
Inflammatory marker for
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I think that is all I have for you. Hopefully that was nice, and hopefully it wasn't too much or too little or anything.